When I brought the cake for my son's birthday, my mother-in-law, Linda, pushed it off the table. That moment is still burned into my brain like a movie scene I never asked to be in. The smell of frosting, the sound of balloons brushing the ceiling, kids half singing happy birthday, and then the crash. The cake I had baked for 3 nights straight, wiped out in one swipe of her perfectly manicured hand. I stood there frozen, my palms sticky with frosting, my son's big brown eyes wide with confusion. My throat tightened, but no sound came out. All I could think was, did that really just happen? I had expected laughter, clapping, and my little boy's cheeks glowing under candlelight. Instead, there was silence, thick and uncomfortable, broken only by the squeak of a chair leg as someone shifted in shock. Jacob's mouth trembled. He had been about to blow out his candles. Now he was staring at the floor, where the cake lay splattered, chocolate layers pressed into the carpet like mud. His classmates gasped. One girl covered her mouth with both hands. My husband, Mark, looked at me helplessly, as if words had abandoned him too. And Linda just shrugged, the faintest smirk on her lips. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I scream? Why didn't I throw her out? Believe me, those thoughts stampeded through my head in that instant. But what came out wasn't anger. It was stillness. The kind of stillness you get when your body is in shock, like falling into cold water. I felt the sting in my chest, the weight pressing on my ribcage, but I stayed standing, quiet, frosting dripping down my wrist. Let me back up for a second, because I need you to understand the contrast. I didn't walk into this birthday party expecting fireworks. I wasn't naive, but I did hope foolishly maybe that it would be simple, joyful. Jacob had just turned 8. He'd begged for a party at home, not at some trampoline park or arcade, just a cozy celebration with his friends, cousins, and a few family members. I promised him I'd make it special. I'd saved up, planned weeks ahead, even took a day off work to decorate the living room. Streamers in blue and gold, a big happy birthday banner, balloons tied in clusters by the fireplace. And the cake. Oh, the cake. 3 layers of moist chocolate sponge, filled with homemade vanilla buttercream, topped with little fondant soccer balls because Jacob is obsessed with soccer. I had piped his name across the top in neat white lettering, something he'd asked me to do because Mom's writing is the best. That cake was more than dessert. It was love in sugar form, my late nights mixing batter, while Jacob slept my early morning runs to the store when I realized I forgot cocoa powder. Every swirl of frosting was for him. So picture me, balancing the cake stand carefully in my hands, walking toward the table while the kids clapped and sang off-key. My heart was pounding, but in a happy way, like when you're about to surprise someone with a gift you know they'll adore. I lowered the cake onto the tablecloth, right in front of Jacob, candles flickering. He leaned forward, cheeks puffed, ready to blow. That's when Linda leaned in too. Her hand shot out quick, deliberate, and shoved the entire cake sideways. The gasp in the room was audible. It wasn't an accident. I saw it in her eyes, the calculation, the sharp twist of her wrist. The cake slid off, tumbled, and landed with a sickening splat. Chocolate and frosting smeared across the carpet, crushed under the edge of the table leg. Kids jumped back, chairs screeched. And Linda, my mother-in-law, simply brushed her palms together like she'd swatted a fly. Inside my head, 2 voices clashed. One said, "Keep calm. Don't ruin Jacob's day even more." The other screamed, "This woman just humiliated you in front of everyone." My stomach clenched. My fingers twitched with the urge to do anything, but my feet were cement. I caught Jacob's eyes again. His face was red now, his little fists clenched. "Mommy, why?" he whispered. He thought it was me. That broke me in ways Linda never could. What nobody else knew in that room was the history. The months, the years leading to that exact second. Linda had always resented me. From the day Mark proposed, she treated me like an intruder in her perfect family. She never said it outright, not in public at least. But the little digs, the pointed jokes, the way she'd sigh every time I walked into a room, it was a constant drip of poison. At Thanksgiving, she once handed me a plastic plate while everyone else ate off china. At Christmas, she bought matching sweaters for the entire family except me. She claimed she forgot my size. Still, I told myself this party would be different. Maybe, just maybe, she'd soften when she saw her grandson surrounded by friends, when she saw how much effort I put in. I convinced myself she wouldn't dare ruin a child's celebration. I was wrong. Standing in that silence, I realized something else. Linda didn't just knock over a cake. She had knocked over my hope. My last shred of belief that she might change, that she might ever accept me as Jacob's mother, as Mark's wife, as family. I bent down slowly, gathering pieces of sponge with my bare hands. The frosting stuck to my palms, sweet and sticky, but all I tasted was bitterness. I heard whispers around me, kids asking what happened, parents exchanging uncomfortable glances. Linda finally spoke, her voice light, airy. Oh dear, it must have been unsteady. Unsteady, number? Her hand had been steady as stone. I forced a smile, though my throat burned. I wiped my hands on a napkin, lifted my chin, and looked straight at her. She didn't blink. Her lipstick curled into the faintest grin, like she had won some unspoken game. My pulse thundered in my ears, but my voice came out steady when I said, "Accidents happen." That was all. Out loud at least. Inside, a storm was brewing. What Linda didn't know was that I had prepared for this, not this exact scene, but for the possibility that something would go wrong. In the kitchen, hidden behind the fruit bowl, was a second cake. Smaller, simpler, but still covered in candles. A backup, because deep down, maybe I had known better than to trust her. As I stood there, sticky hands trembling, Jacob tugged at my sleeve. "Do we still get to sing, Mom?" And the silence that follows the silence that makes you hear every small sound in the room. That's how it felt standing there in my living room, frosting still on my hands, with 20 pairs of eyes watching me like I was about to either break down or fight back. But before I tell you what happened next, let me tell you what I thought would happen. Because the difference between what I imagined and what actually happened is the only way to measure the sting. I had pictured this birthday for weeks, maybe even months. I thought I'd walk out with the cake, Jacob's little face glowing in candlelight. The kids would be chanting his name, clapping offbeat. The adults would laugh, take out their phones, record a video, maybe even post something nice online about how thoughtful I was. I thought Linda might even say a rare, kind word, maybe something like, "Emily, you did a beautiful job." Foolish? Absolutely. But after so many years of her side eyes and her digs, I wanted desperately for just one evening to be normal. In my head, I saw myself lighting the candles, holding the cake steady while Jacob leaned in, cheeks puffed, eyes bright. He would blow them out in one big huff, the room would cheer, and for a few minutes everything would feel like family should. That was the movie in my head. Simple, predictable, sweet. Instead, what happened was the sound of the cake hitting the floor and Jacob's voice trembling. "Mommy, why?" Instead of cheers, there was silence. Instead of warmth, there was a cold draft. The kind you only feel when something sacred is ruined. And Linda, she wasn't sorry. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't even pretending. No, she sat back in her chair, crossed one leg over the other, and smirked like she had just proved a point. As if the cake wasn't the only thing she pushed off the table. She wanted me off the table too, out of the family, out of Jacob's memory of this day. I'd love to tell you that this was the first time she had tried something like this. It would make me sound less foolish, wouldn't it? But the truth is, there had been signs. There were always signs. Take last Christmas, for example. We had agreed as a family to do a Secret Santa exchange. One gift each, budget $50. Simple, fun, low pressure. Everyone played along. Everyone except Linda. When it came time to exchange, she handed Jacob a giant box, an expensive gaming console he had been begging for, the kind of gift no one else could compete with. The kind of gift that erased every smaller toy I had carefully wrapped, every thoughtful little stocking stuffer. And the worst part? She handed it to him with a glance at me, like she was saying, "See? I can give him more than you ever could." Or the Easter brunch 2 years ago. She brought pastel-colored baskets for all the kids except the one I had put together for Jacob. Mine looked simple compared to hers. chocolate eggs, a few small toys. Hers looked like something out of a store display. Ribbons, expensive candy, even a gift card taped to the side. And when Jacob reached for mine, she nudged hers closer, saying, "Sweetie, don't you want the bigger one?" Each time I swallowed my pride. I told myself not to make a scene, not to ruin the holiday, not to let her win. But deep down, I knew what she was doing. She wasn't just spoiling her grandson. She was drawing a line. Her on one side, me on the other. So why did I still hope for something different on Jacob's birthday? Maybe because birthdays are sacred to kids. Maybe because I thought she'd at least respect that. Or maybe because I'm an optimist who hasn't learned her lesson. As the silence stretched after the cake hit the carpet, I caught sight of Mark. He was standing near the drinks table, his hands half raised like he wanted to intervene but didn't know how. His eyes flicked from me to his mother and back again. He opened his mouth, then closed it. That's Mark in a nutshell. Good heart, weak voice when it comes to his mother. He loves me, I know he does. But when Linda is around, he becomes a boy again, not a man. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and say, "Do you see what she just did? Do you see how she humiliates me over and over?" But the words lodged in my throat, because right then Jacob was staring at me. Not at Linda, at me. And he needed me to be steady. So I forced myself to smile, even as my heart pounded. "Accidents happen," I said aloud, even though we both knew it wasn't an accident. The room exhaled a little, people shifting in their seats. Someone whispering, "Poor thing." Linda leaned back, satisfied, like the curtain had dropped on her performance. But here's the thing. I had prepared for this moment, even if I didn't know it. Because somewhere deep down, I never trusted her. That's why I had made a second cake. Smaller. Yes. Less decorated. Yes. But it was waiting in the kitchen, hidden behind a bowl of apples, just in case. And as I looked at Jacob, his little face flushed, his fist still clenched, I made a choice. I could let Linda's push define the day, or I could rewrite it. My hands were still trembling, but I reached for him, squeezed his shoulder, and whispered, "Don't worry, baby. We're not done yet." What Linda didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the party wasn't ruined. Not yet, because the real story hadn't even started. You might be wondering how one woman could get away with so much. How could Linda push a cake off the table, in front of children and adults, and not instantly be called out? That's the thing. What happened at Jacob's birthday wasn't born in that moment. It was years in the making, built on a pattern so steady it almost felt normal. Almost. I met Linda the night Mark and I got engaged. She invited us over to celebrate. I thought it was sweet at first. She hugged Mark, kissed his cheek, and told him how proud she was. Then she turned to me, smiled tight as a bowstring, and said, "Well, I guess congratulations are in order. You certainly moved fast." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking. Mark laughed too, though it sounded forced. But I caught the edge in her eyes. That was strike one. A few months later, she insisted on hosting our engagement dinner at her house. I offered to help with the menu, maybe bring dessert. She waved me off. "No need, just bring yourself." That should have been a warning. When the night came, she had set the table with crystal glasses, polished silverware, everything sparkling. At each place setting, there was a little name card written in fancy calligraphy, except mine. My seat had a plain white folded card with "Guest" scribbled in black ink. Everyone noticed. Nobody said a word. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, but the damage was done. Then came the wedding. Ah, yes, the wedding. Linda wanted to plan it herself, down to the flowers and the music. She even tried to choose my dress, saying, "Something simple would be best. Don't overshadow Mark." I put my foot down on that one, but I paid for it later. On the day itself, as we were lining up for photos, Linda positioned herself directly beside Mark in every shot. Not me. She kept shifting, tugging me slightly to the side. When I looked at the proofs weeks later, half the photos looked like mother and son portraits with me blurred at the edge. At first, I told myself these were small things, little digs. Maybe I was imagining some of it. Maybe she just had trouble letting go of her son. That's what Mark said when I brought it up. "She means well, Emily. She's just adjusting. Give her time. So I gave her time, and time gave me more proof. Like the Thanksgiving when Jacob was just a toddler. I had spent 2 days making sweet potato casserole, pies, and stuffing. I carried everything into Linda's kitchen, proud and exhausted. She looked at my dishes, then leaned down to Jacob, who was clinging to my leg, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't worry, sweetie. Grandma made the real food." My face burned. I wanted to leave right then, but I didn't. I stayed, smiling tightly, because I didn't want Jacob's first memory of Thanksgiving to be his mom storming out, or the 4th of July picnic a few years later. Linda brought a giant cooler packed with burgers, hot dogs, and soda. I had brought a fruit salad and homemade lemonade. When Jacob reached for my lemonade, Linda slid a can of soda into his hand instead. "That's what all the kids drink," she said, eyes locked on me. He was only 5. That night, he got a stomachache so bad he curled up on the couch, and she said, "Well, maybe he just can't handle fun." It wasn't always public either. Sometimes it was in the smaller moments, the quiet ones. Like the texts she sent me, always short, always critical. "Jacob's hair is too long. His clothes look cheap. He spends too much time with you. He needs more with Mark." They came like clockwork, little grenades landing in my phone. I started dreading her name popping up on the screen. And yet through all of this, I bit my tongue. I swallowed the words that clawed at my throat. Why? Because I thought enduring was the price of peace. I wanted Jacob to grow up with grandparents. I wanted Mark to have his mother in his life without guilt. I thought if I just kept giving, eventually Linda would soften. Eventually she would see that I wasn't competition, that I wasn't the enemy. But here's what I learned the hard way. Some people don't want peace. They want control. And if you don't give it, they will find ways to take it. That's what Linda did, over and over. Every birthday, every holiday, every gathering became a stage where she reminded me that I was second place. The worst part? Mark rarely stood up to her. He loved me. I know he did. But when Linda raised her eyebrow, he folded. When she made a cutting remark, he changed the subject. He was caught between us, but instead of choosing, he froze. And that silence, that lack of defense, hurt more than Linda's words sometimes. Because it told me that maybe, just maybe, he didn't see how bad it really was. So when Jacob's birthday came around this year, I prayed. Not literally, but I hoped harder than ever. I thought, maybe because it's his special day, maybe because there will be so many witnesses, Linda will behave. She'll smile for the photos, clap along with the kids. Let me have this one. I told myself she couldn't possibly cross the line in front of children. But Linda doesn't see lines. She only sees opportunities. And when that cake slid off the table, I realized it wasn't about sugar or candles or even Jacob. It was about me. It had always been about me. She wanted to remind everyone, one more time, that she held the power. That no matter how hard I worked, how much I gave, how many cakes I baked or decorations I hung, she could knock it all down in a single gesture. She wanted me to feel small, and for a moment I did. Standing there, sticky hands trembling, eyes burning, I felt as small as I did the first time she called me guest at my own engagement dinner. But there was something different this time, because Jacob was watching. And I realized, if I stayed small now, if I swallowed it again, Jacob would learn that being humiliated is something you just accept, and that I couldn't allow. So when I whispered to him, "We're not done yet," I wasn't just talking about the cake. I was talking about us. About rewriting the story Linda had tried to script for me for years. And if she thought knocking over one cake was the end, she had no idea what was coming next. The cake lay on the carpet like a fallen monument, icing smeared across the fibers in messy swirls. The candles had gone out in the fall, little sticks of wax bent at odd angles, their flames snuffed before Jacob even had the chance to blow. The smell of chocolate and buttercream mixed with the faint lemon of floor cleaner, a scent I knew I would never forget. The room was so silent you could hear the balloons shifting against the ceiling with every draft of air. Jacob's face crumpled. He had been leaning forward, his chest puffed, ready to make a wish, and now he stared at the floor with wide, wet eyes. His lips quivered. He looked at me, not at Linda, not at the cake, but at me as if I could undo what had just happened. His little voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. Mommy, what did I do? That question tore through me like glass. He thought it was his fault. He thought his own birthday wish had somehow broken the moment. My chest tightened. My throat burned. I wanted to scoop him up, hold him tight, shield him from the sight of frosting dripping onto the rug. But my hands were frozen, because across the table Linda was smiling. Not a wide smile, not enough for everyone to see, but just enough for me. A curl of her lips, a glimmer in her eyes, a silent message, I win. The parents sitting around shifted uncomfortably. One coughed. Another pretended to check her phone. Kids whispered, confused. Mark stood stiff near the drinks table, eyes darting between me and his mother like he was trying to solve a math problem too hard for him. His hands twitched at his sides, but he stayed still, always still. My heart thundered in my chest, my pulse loud in my ears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout, this wasn't an accident. She shoved it. I wanted to point at her, expose her cruelty in front of everyone. But then Jacob's hand tugged at my sleeve again, trembling, seeking reassurance. And I knew I couldn't explode. If I lost control, he'd lose the memory of his 8th birthday forever. He didn't need fireworks of anger. He needed steadiness. So I bent down slowly, my knees pressing into the carpet, my palms sinking into the frosting as I gathered the broken pieces. The buttercream stuck to my skin, cold and sticky, smearing across my fingers. My chest heaved, but I kept my face calm. My hands shook, but I moved with care, as if this were part of the plan. I heard Linda's voice behind me, light, casual. Oh dear, it must have been unsteady. Unsteady, that word echoed in my head. Her hand had been steady, cold, deliberate, and she thought no one would call her on it. I rose slowly, holding the ruined remains on a plate, and set them gently on the counter. My palms were covered in smears of white and brown. I wiped them on a napkin, each stroke deliberate, like I was erasing not just frosting, but something heavier. Then I looked up, straight at Linda. Our eyes locked. Hers gleamed with triumph. Mine, I hoped, told a different story. Not today. The kids were restless now, whispering, shifting in their seats. Jacob was still frozen, blinking hard to keep tears from spilling. I knelt in front of him, tucking a strand of hair behind his ear. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered, loud enough for the room to hear. Cakes can fall, but wishes don't. His eyes searched mine, confused but trusting. I kissed his forehead and stood, and that's when I moved to the kitchen. Every step felt like walking on stage, every gaze on my back heavy and waiting. I opened the pantry door, reached behind the fruit bowl, and pulled out the second cake. Smaller, yes. Less elaborate, yes, but whole. Perfect in its own quiet way. I carried it out, balancing it carefully. The candles already tucked inside. Gasps rippled through the room. I placed it in front of Jacob with steady hands, lit the candles one by one, the flames flickering back to life. The room hushed again, but this time it was different. Not the silence of shock. The silence of anticipation. Linda's face froze. The smirk slipped, replaced by something harder, something colder. She hadn't expected this. She thought she had ended the night with one push. But here I was, standing taller than I felt, frosting still clinging under my nails, lighting a new beginning. Make your wish, Jacob, I said softly. My voice didn't shake. And blow them out. We'll start again. The kids leaned in, clapping this time, louder than before, voices rising in messy harmony. Happy birthday to you. Jacob's face lit up, the tears still wet, but replaced with a spark of hope. He leaned forward, cheeks puffed and blue. The candles flickered out, smoke curling into the air, and the room erupted in cheers. I glanced at Linda. She was motionless, her lips pressed tight, her hands folded so neatly they looked like claws. The power had shifted, just slightly, but enough for her to feel it, enough for her to know she hadn't won. Inside, my heart still pounded. My hands still shook. But I smiled, because in that moment I realized something. Linda could knock down cakes, decorations, even my pride, but she couldn't knock down the bond between me and Jacob. That was mine. Untouchable. The party stumbled forward after that. Kids grabbed slices, juice boxes popped open, laughter filled the room again. Parents relaxed, relieved, talking in hushed tones about the accident. Mark hovered near me, his face pale, eyes darting as if searching for the right words. But Linda stayed silent. She didn't leave. She didn't apologize. She just sat there, rigid, her eyes never leaving me. I knew this wasn't over. The cake was just the surface. The real battle was deeper, older, messier. But for now, I had won a small victory, a silent victory. And as Jacob hugged me tight, his little arms sticky with frosting, whispering, "Thanks, Mom," I knew this day wouldn't be remembered for the cake on the floor. It would be remembered for the moment we lit the candles twice. What Linda didn't realize yet was that in trying to ruin Jacob's birthday, she had handed me the stage. And I wasn't going to step off quietly. The candles had been blown out, the cheers had returned, and Jacob's face finally carried the joy I had been fighting for. To everyone else, it probably looked like the disaster was patched up, that we had saved the evening, but I knew better. The room might have moved on, but Linda hadn't. I could feel her eyes on me, sharp and unblinking, as though she was recalculating her next move. Parents chatted quietly, cutting slices of cake, sipping punch. Kids tore into their slices with sticky fingers, laughter ringing again. The living room began to hum with normalcy, the kind you get after a scare when everyone wants to pretend nothing happened. But Linda sat stiff in her chair, lips tight, hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just watched. Mark drifted toward me, clutching a paper plate with untouched cake. He looked pale, shoulders tense, words hovering unsaid. "Emily," he started, then trailed off, glancing toward his mother. His eyes pleaded, but I shook my head. "Not now, not here. Because here's the truth. When someone tries to humiliate you in public, you don't always win by shouting back. Sometimes you win by standing taller, by refusing to crumble." And as much as I wanted to unload years of swallowed words onto Linda right there in front of everyone, I knew that wasn't the moment. The real reckoning would come later. For now, I focused on Jacob. I knelt beside him, wiping frosting from his cheek, fixing his soccer-themed paper hat. "Did you make your wish?" I asked softly. He nodded, his eyes brighter now, his voice steadier. "Yeah, I wished for us to have fun anyway." My heart squeezed. He was only 8, but he understood resilience better than some adults. Still, beneath the noise of children playing, I caught snippets of conversation. Parents murmuring, "Did she really push it?" "No way, maybe it slipped." "I don't know, it looks strange." Whispers spread like smoke. Linda's perfect image was cracking, even if just a little. That was something she could never allow. And sure enough, she rose from her chair. Her movements were graceful, controlled, but her eyes betrayed her fury. She walked toward Jacob, her heels clicking softly against the floor. "Sweetheart," she cooed, crouching beside him, brushing invisible crumbs from his shirt. "I'm so sorry about the little accident earlier. Grandma didn't mean to. You know that, don't you?" Her tone was syrupy sweet, but I saw Jacob hesitate. He glanced at me before nodding reluctantly. Linda smiled, satisfied, then looked at me. Just for a second, that look said it all. See? He still believes me. I still have him. My jaw tightened, but I didn't move. Not yet. Instead, I busied myself refilling drinks, straightening napkins, keeping the party alive. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story in front of my son. Not this time. When the last child was picked up, and the streamers began to sag, the house fell quiet. Mark started collecting plates, muttering something about trash bags. Jacob was curled on the couch, exhausted but happy, clutching the small toy one of his friends had given him. And Linda, she lingered. Of course she lingered. She always did. The silence stretched until she broke it. "You handled yourself well," she said, her voice low, almost admiring. Almost. Not everyone would have been prepared with a second cake. I turned to face her. My hands were raw from scrubbing frosting out of the carpet. My back ached, but my eyes didn't waver. I know who I'm dealing with, I replied. Calm. Even. Her smile was thin. You think you won tonight, don't you? I didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, I walked to the couch, sat beside Jacob, and wrapped my arm around him. He leaned into me instantly, his small body warm against mine. That was my answer. That was my victory. Linda's eyes darkened, but she said nothing more. She gathered her purse, her coat, and with a clipped, "Good night," she left. The door clicked shut behind her, but the air she left behind was heavy, charged like a storm that hadn't finished. Mark finally sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "Emily, I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice cracked. "I should have stopped her. I should have said something." I looked at him, exhaustion and anger colliding in my chest. "You think?" The words slipped out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back, because he needed to hear it. "Mark, she humiliated me in front of everyone. Again. And you just stood there." His face crumpled, shame flickering across it. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I'm tired of this," I said softly, my voice steadier now. "I'm tired of being her target and your silence being her shield." He swallowed hard. "She's my mom," he murmured. "And I'm your wife," I shot back. "I'm Jacob's mother. We're your family too." The weight of those words settled between us, heavier than the ruined cake still staining the carpet. He had no answer. Not yet. That night, after Jacob drifted to sleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but my mind roared. The cake had been just one act in a play Linda had been directing for years. But tonight, for the first time, I had taken back part of the stage. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Linda wasn't the kind of woman to let a challenge go unanswered. She would regroup, plan, and strike again. The thought made my chest tighten, but it also lit something inside me, a resolve I hadn't felt before, because tonight proved something. I didn't need to scream to fight back. I didn't need to stoop to her games. I could win by standing firm, by protecting Jacob, by refusing to let her steal the spotlight she craved. But as I closed my eyes, one thought echoed louder than the rest. If she thought tonight was the end, she was wrong. It was just the beginning. The morning after Jacob's birthday, I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the spot where the first cake had fallen. The carpet had been scrubbed, the plates washed, the streamers taken down, but the memory was still there, sharper than any stain remover could erase. I stood with my coffee cooling in my hands, the silence of the house pressing against me. Jacob was at school, Mark at work, and for the first time since last night, I had a moment to breathe. But breathing wasn't easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's hand, the deliberate shove, the smirk, the way she crouched down later, pretending to comfort Jacob, her voice dripping with false sweetness. And I saw my boy's eyes, wide with confusion, searching mine for answers I couldn't give in that moment. For years, I had convinced myself to endure, to keep the peace, to swallow my pride for the sake of family unity. But last night changed something in me. Watching Jacob nearly break, watching him ask if he was the reason his birthday fell apart, it snapped something inside. I realized that every time I let Linda win, every time I stayed silent, I was teaching him a lesson I never wanted him to learn. That it's okay for someone to treat you as less. I couldn't let that be his inheritance. When Mark came home that evening, he found me sitting at the table with a notebook open, words scrawled across the page. He hesitated in the doorway, guilt still heavy in his eyes. "Emily," he said softly, "I don't know what to say." I looked up. "Then don't say anything. Just listen." And I told him. Everything. From the engagement dinner where I was just guest, to the wedding photos where I was shoved to the edge, to the holidays where my efforts were dismissed. I laid it all out, not with anger, but with clarity. For the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I just spoke the truth, steady and unshakable. Mark sat in silence, his face pale, his hands knotted together. When I finished, he whispered, "I should have seen it. I should have stopped it." "You still can," I said, but I can't fight this battle alone anymore. If you want this family to stand, you have to stand with me, not behind me, not in silence. With me." He nodded slowly, eyes shining with tears. I didn't know if he was ready to change, but for the first time I believed he wanted to. And maybe that was enough to start. As for Linda, I knew she wouldn't back down. Women like her don't surrender control easily. There would be another test, another scene, another attempt to push me down, but something was different now. I wasn't the same woman she first met, the one who laughed nervously at her digs and let her rewrite my place at the table. No, now I was the mother who lit the candles twice, the wife who spoke the truth without shaking, the woman who realized that silence might keep the peace, but it also keeps the chains. And here's the lesson I took from it, the one I want Jacob to carry long after he forgets the cake and the frosting stains. You don't have to shout to be strong. You don't have to humiliate to win. Sometimes the quietest actions standing steady, refusing to break, echo the loudest. Because Linda's shove wasn't just about cake. It was about control. And when I lit those candles again, I showed Jacob that control can be taken back, one steady breath at a time. Do I know what the future holds? Number. I know Linda. She will strike again. Maybe at Thanksgiving, maybe at Christmas, maybe at Jacob's next big milestone. But next time, I won't face her with shaky hands and a nervous smile. I'll face her with the calm of someone who knows she's already survived worse. And maybe, just maybe, that's what true power looks like. As I close this chapter, I want to leave you with this. Families aren't perfect. They're messy, complicated, sometimes even cruel. But you get to decide what role you play in that story. You get to decide when enough is enough, when silence no longer serves you, when it's time to pick up the microphone, even if your hands are still covered in frosting. That's what I learned at my son's 8th birthday. That's what I'll carry into every day after. And if you've been here with me through this journey, if you've ever felt silenced, overlooked, or pushed aside, I hope my story gave you something too. A reminder that your voice matters, that your steadiness can shake the ground under anyone who underestimates you. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories about resilience, family, and finding strength in the most unexpected places, I'd love for you to join me here. Hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss the next chapter. Because trust me, this story isn't finished, not by a long shot. And as for Linda, well, let's just say the next round hasn't even begun.